And welcome to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. My guest tonight is Howard Schwartz from the Better Business Bureau. Howard, welcome. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Pete. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming down. Thanks for coming down. So for those, my viewers and listeners that don't know, who is Howard Schwartz from the Better Business Bureau? I'm sure they've seen you on other platforms and other stations, but they're probably thinking, okay, we see this guy Howard Schwartz on TV all the time, but who is he?
In terms of work?
Yeah.
I joined the Better Business Bureau in Connecticut back in 2008, in January.
All right.
My background is broadcasting, and what I'm doing now is essentially the same thing, and that is, if we can help one person through this public outreach, one person from getting scammed or getting cheated or getting hurt, then it's worth all the effort.
Right.
So working for Better Business Bureau gives me that opportunity to educate and learn myself. I'm no different than anyone else. I have many attempted scams, and I'm able to just sort of laugh it off.
Right.
But it's not a laughing matter for most folks.
No.
And I think perhaps, Pete, the most important thing we can say today is when folks are finished watching, discuss these things with your parents, with your aunts, uncles, friends, and neighbors, because ultimately that's going to be the way to beat the scammers.
Exactly. Now, what exactly do you do for the BBB?
I'm the Executive Communications Director, which means I write news releases, 1 or 2 a week. I do outreach such as this, radio, television interviews, some stuff on the web, and live presentations. So, for example, today in Hartford, it was the Department of Insurance, and we're talking about scams, what is Better Business Bureau, and so on.
I was going to say, maybe let's talk about a little bit about what you did up in Hartford, today, and what topics you covered.
Well, it was what is Better Business Bureau, and it was an interesting presentation because typically it's about scams. Better Business Bureau, the original concept when you mention it to somebody is they think, well, that's the place where I'm going to report a business to. I'm going to report you to Better Business Bureau because you're not treating me well or there's a dispute.
Right.
We still do take complaints, but we've evolved over the past couple of years to a place to go to before you sign a contract, before you give money to a charity or hire a professional. You go to our website, you type in the name or the URL, the web address, or the phone number, and it'll bring you to what's called a business review. And it'll tell you about other consumers' experiences. There's a letter grade that we assign, as well as several criteria that determine the letter grade. And if it's the lowest, which is F, we'll explain what lowered it. If it's an A+ or anywhere in between, we explain what raised it. But what's interesting about it is it keeps a record of complaints over 36 months. Now, you may not even find a complaint for a lot of folks, but the point is you want to look it up anyways, and when there are complaints, read them. We have transcripts of them with personal information redacted, and you'll see not only what people are saying about the company, but how the business is actually responding. And that way you can decide for yourself, is this the kind of place I want to do business with? And today, when you have so much competition, and we're each looking at a very, very fine line in terms of profit or in terms of what we pay, it's going to boil down to customer service. And I think that's a really big issue now.
And why do you think that's such a big issue as far as customer service goes, the way with the BBB?
Because people don't have a lot of patience, and they don't want to have to go through the kinds of problems that we have, especially in an age where we can accomplish things so quickly. And Better Business Bureau, we're not a state agency, we're not a federal agency, but we're in the unique position of being able to try and improve the marketplace by getting consumers and sellers to trust each other. And I think that, again, if we can go on the internet, and we know so many people do most of their shopping on the internet.
Oh, of course they do.
Then they're going to want that same kind of service, polite service, quick service. That being said, at the local level, the brick and mortar stores, these are folks who've been around a long time, and the ones who want to be accredited by Better Business Bureau have proven themselves in the community. They're honest, it's been passed on from one generation to another, and people work hard at that, and they want to showcase the good service that they've offered over the years.
Exactly. Now, as far as how has the Better Business Bureau changed over the years?
Well, we've evolved to the point where we do this education. Our website is crawling with all sorts of things. Tips on how to use credit, tips on how to avoid scams, what happens after a data breach. We have some wonderful programs now. Military Line is one of them, which you'll find on our webpage, where we provide resources for military families, whether or not it's someone in the service or back. We have a Military Line scholarship, which is one of our 2 scholarships we give away each year. and we raise money for that, and it'll be a high school junior who's the family of a veteran or someone who's in active service. We also have things that help out the elderly. Connecticut Better Business Bureau is a member of the coordinating committee of the Connecticut Elder Justice Committee.
Okay.
And essentially, it's trying to put into place, this is we're partnering with state agencies and other nonprofits, and we're trying to put into place an infrastructure for the elderly, for elderly abuse, the same as we have for child abuse and for spousal abuse.
Okay.
So we're very proud to be on that committee. That's on our website also. And perhaps one of the most daunting things is with all of the information that's available to us, a common question is, who do I go to and for what? What agency do I go to? How do I know? And we can use the example of elderly abuse. How do I recognize it? What constitutes financial abuse? But it goes way beyond that because we're entering an era, again, and technology plays such a big role in the marketplace now and in our lives, and they're inextricably linked. So what Better Business Bureau is trying to do, and I'll mention the charity aspect of it, is scammers appeal really to our fears and our generosity and our desire to act right away.
Okay.
We saw after man-made and natural disasters hundreds of websites popping up in the days that followed.
Right.
Fake websites using lookalike names to charities. So it might have said carefornewtown.com.
Right.
It might have been something on social media. Well, it's to the point now where there are three types of charities. There are the ones who do the job well, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
There's some very well-meaning charities
Okay.
that don't have the people on the ground who know how to process payments and distribute it. And then there are the ones that are outright frauds. And what we are encouraging people to do is, because of the amount of money that's at stake and the issues at stake, we don't want it to become a double theft. You losing money from the people who donate it and the people that it's destined for not getting it. Right. So if you're not sure when you want to give, we recommend that you contact an established charity to find out if they have feet on the ground in a particular place, and check out charities carefully before you give. And I think one of the things we should touch on really is the telephone. And we know that despite the do not call list, there are a few exemptions, one of which is charities.
Right.
And a theme that we are going to be talking about is the telephone and how it's used for scams.
Okay.
Yes, charities are allowed to call you, but at this point in 2016, we don't know who's on the other end of the line.
Right.
Caller ID is notoriously unreliable.
Right.
So if somebody calls up from a charity asking for donations, thank you, but no thank you, and you go and you do the research and be proactive.
Right.
Find your own rather than responding. And the same with political campaign calls.
Oh, yeah.
They are allowed under the do not call rules.
Right.
However, if they ask for a donation and you give your credit card out, who are you really giving it to?
Exactly. Sort of like I know there was a scam not long ago with, I don't remember which utility company it was with. They wanted you to pay by prepaid debit card.
That's a good point.
I was going to say, I'm like,
That's Eversource, and by no means are they the only ones. This is across the country.
Right.
It falls under the umbrella of what has become known as imposter scams.
Okay.
And I'm glad you brought that one up because people got nailed last year. This year they received phone calls, and essentially the imposter scam, whether it's Internal Revenue Service imposter or someone claiming to be from the utility, is they will call you up. They will use that sense of fear and say, well, the weather's cold, you are behind on your payments. If you don't give me the money on a preloaded debit card or by wire transfer, we will disconnect your electricity. They may threaten to have a police officer show up at your door. So the whole idea is to frighten us into letting our guard down, and unfortunately it works.
Right.
What we have to remember is utilities, banks, financial institutions, insurance companies, doctors, dentists, none of them will ask for personal information over the telephone if they're initiating the call, nor will they send you an email asking you to click on a link or open an attachment.
Exactly. So that should probably be, if you get an email from somebody clicking on a link, opening an attachment, probably just delete it and don't do anything with it.
Well, the fake emails are very convincing now.
Exactly.
And that being said, any adolescent who's watching us knows that with very little effort, you can create a web page that looks like it comes from the government or from a delivery service or anything else for that matter. But it's that fear. I've received emails supposedly from the Internal Revenue Service, and it's laughable if not for the fact that they get people and cheat them out of money. But this one was addressed to Dear Member. And I didn't know that I was a member of the Internal Revenue Service. Some people have said, well, if it's a membership, why don't you just opt out?
Exactly.
But it's that fear thing. They wanted me to click on a link. At another time, I was told that a friend of mine had passed away. It was a notice from a funeral parlor. Open this attachment so you can find out who your friend is that passed away. No. Best thing to do is just delete the email if you don't know who it's from.
Exactly. Just delete it or mark it as spam and then delete it so you won't get any other emails from. Now, as far as the trying to prevent scams from hitting your email box, the best thing to do is probably if you get something from somebody that you don't know looking for money, as far as like a fake charity goes, best thing is probably to just delete the email.
That's correct. I delete any email that does not come from a friend or a relative.
Right.
And in fact, what I do and what most folks should do is open up a second email account. Use that one for registering for whether it's a pharmacy card or registering for a drawing or a raffle. Because the thing is, we're giving out a lot of personal information.
Right.
Whether we have to or not. So I think we have to remember, again, whether it's a raffle, whether it's a pharmacy or a store card, do you want to give out your email address? Do you want to give out your home address? Do you want to give out your cell phone number?
Exactly.
So when you start receiving emails and letters and phone calls, the problem is when we give that information out, who are they going to share it with?
Exactly.
And what are they going to do with it?
Exactly.
So if it comes from a financial institution or a utility, there will be a telephone number in there and an email address to opt out of most sharing. Not all.
No, definitely not.
But if it's at the local level, or if it's a small, again, a raffle, and I mention that because I would see at fairs people collecting huge amounts of personal information from people.
Right, exactly.
And those are the seeds of identity theft. You don't need a lot of information to take someone's identity, and that's unfortunate. So we have to watch the email.
Yeah.
Use that other email account. I actually deleted the one that I normally use because there was so much garbage arriving. But I could trace most of that junk down to time periods where I had signed up for something.
Right.
So I have a new personal email account, and the other one takes everything into its spam filter, strangely enough.
Exactly.
That's a very helpful way of dealing with it.
I was going to say, I have the same thing. I've got a email address just for stuff like that, and I check that like once a week, once every couple of weeks, just to make sure nothing snuck in
or that nobody who you want to hear from got stuck in the spam filter.
Exactly, exactly.
And there's a lot of confusion over email. People think just by opening an email that will release a virus, and that's not true. If you click on a link, it's
That's
bad.
where the virus gets you.
That's where the virus gets you, or if you open up an attachment.
Right.
Such as I got another attempted scam which told me that I had to appear at the Court of Cleveland and to get all my records ready. And it said, open the attachment and print out the information.
Yeah, no,
so they had no idea who I was at all.
Actually, we'll talk about that when we come back. Would you mind sticking around?
I'd love to.
We'll be right back.
We need a new house because this one is too small. We need 37 bedrooms in order to accommodate the dramatic increase in children. Yale New Haven Children's Hospital. This new house will be more specialized in the rooms that we provide and much larger to accommodate the sheer volume of families who are going to need us.
Alvin and the Chipmunks want to remind you, bacteria can hide in food and make you ill.
Wow.
But you can keep bacteria from ruining your day with 4 simple steps. Clean.
I'm waiting for the rinse cycle.
Separate. Cook.
Fire in the hole!
And chill.
We chipmunks are notoriously tidy.
Check your steps. The road trip to food safety starts at foodsafety.gov.
And welcome back to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. Sitting here with Howard Schwartz from the Better Business Bureau. Howard, welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we were talking about emails before we went into the break, and email security, and if you get an email from somebody you don't know, don't open it. Can we maybe touch base on that a little bit more?
Sure, because unfortunately, you can also receive an email from someone you do know, and it'll contain a link in there that will download a virus into your computer.
Right.
Let me explain how this happens.
Sure, please.
You don't have to have your email hacked in order for your email address to be used. Now, often we'll send an email to a friend, and then in the CC field, we'll put 2, 3, 5, 10 other people's email addresses.
Right.
When that happens, there are bots, programs that go around the internet, and all they do is pick up email addresses. So if I get an email from Pete Mezzetti, and it tells me, and it has no subject line or just says RE, and inside there's a link with no text, well, I know that that's not the way that you email.
Right, exactly.
And I get those from my friends, and rather than saying your email account's been hacked, it hasn't. The point is not to get you to respond to the email.
Exactly.
It's to get you to click on that link.
Exactly.
And so one of the other things we can recommend to spare your friends is to, when you're going to send out an email to a bunch of people, do it in BCC, which is blind carbon copy.
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about. I'm sure you've experienced this as well. I know I have. The new chip-enabled debit cards that everybody's been getting in the mail from their banks and their financial institutions.
Let's take one out. Nope, my wallet's over there.
I was going to say, actually, you know what? Let me see. We can
and by the way, I don't know your credit card number.
No, thank you.
We're not going to give it out.
No, please, I beg of you. Let's not. As far, let's talk about the debit card numbers as far as the way the new cards look and.
Sure. Now, without giving away the giving away the shop, there's a little chip in here. It's called an EMV card.
Okay.
And basically, it's not a powered chip.
Okay.
It is merely a chip that's based on shoplifting, anti-shoplifting technology.
All right.
So what happens is there's a signal bounced off of that the same way as if you shoplifted.
Right.
And if it's a certain frequency and they bounce that wave off there, it's going to send off an alarm.
Okay.
Well, this technology, when you slip the card in, there's a signal that bounces off of it, and if it all matches, that card will generate a unique code for that transaction.
Okay.
Now, if I take your card, I can try and recreate it with the chip, but I won't be able to.
Exactly.
That being said, there's a very big loophole with those cards right now.
Okay.
And that's the magnetic strip we have on the back. And those are still on there. And just so folks understand, it's not that these cards are any less safe than what we've got.
Right.
But what we've got now, and with the chip cards, as long as they have that strip on the back, somebody can copy your card.
Right.
And the reason the strip is still on the back is because not everybody has those special terminals.
Right, exactly.
There are places you can go to in the world that they'll just look at you. Some that'll say if you don't have the chip, they can't process it.
Right.
But others that say we don't have the ability to do that. So until that magnetic strip comes off the back of our credit cards, these chips are halfway doing their job.
Okay.
And I know that compliance is not at 100%. As of October, all merchants were, the liability switched from the credit card companies to them in the event of fraud. But the other thing is that if you take a look at the effect of having better security on credit cards, in Canada and Europe, where they've had these for many more years, there's been a drop in the order of 37% of credit card fraud. There's been a corresponding increase in online fraud, and the reason being the chip cards can't help us protect ourselves online because we still have to give out our number, our expiration date, and the CVV security code on the back.
Right.
It doesn't mean don't use it. It just means for the moment, it's really a concern of merchants. If we're using a credit card, that'll give us a protection. Not so much with the debit card.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, and you just mentioned this, the new chip cards, I guess you have to have there's a special machine to like insert. You can still use it as a credit card. You can still use it as a regular debit card, but I guess there's like a special machine. The merchants have to get to process the.
Correct. And most of them have it. And rather than swiping, you insert it.
It just goes in insert, okay.
It takes a little bit longer to process, as we found out during the holidays.
Okay.
And we're actually coming up on a technology where you just wave the card over the card reader, and it'll pick up your information.
Really?
It's
wow.
It's going down to the point though where because of this mixture of chip and stripe, and I know that in Europe they've gone with either chip and signature or chip and PIN number. So in a sense, it's getting a little more complicated. But for example, I have on the back of my credit cards, I write request photo ID, and I would say 9 times out of 10 they do not ask for photo identification. But let's talk about debit cards because you mentioned that.
Let's go.
A lot of us have the impression that a debit card, because we're asked, will that be debit or credit, that it's a credit card. We should understand, even though it has a Visa or MasterCard logo on the bottom of it, it is not a credit card.
No.
Any purchase you make, that money comes straight out of your bank account.
Comes out of your bank account, right.
Exactly. When this became important, when I really, what really pricked my ears up was when we had the data breaches 2 years ago.
Okay.
And I was among the millions of people who had their information compromised, and I'm starting to think back, and I used to use my debit card for most purchases.
Right.
Well, then I reasoned if criminals have credit card information and debit card information, they can empty my bank account very easily.
Right.
And if I have any incoming checks, they're going to bounce.
Right.
So what I do now is I'll use that debit card at two places. One is at the bank, and the other is at certain gas stations which don't accept debit cards.
Right.
And that's it. It is essentially now for me an ATM card. I can't take the risk, and people should understand, especially for online, use a credit card, because if there's a dispute, rather than fighting to get the money back into your bank account, you call up the credit card company.
And
Exactly. And they're very receptive,
Right.
you've noticed.
I was gonna say there's probably a little bit of a difference as if you have a dispute on your credit card rather than if you call your bank rather than if you call your credit card company. Is the turnaround time a little bit quicker?
They're both willing to help you. And I found in cases with disputes, they'll say, all right, just send us a letter.
Right.
In the meantime, we will give you a chargeback, which means they will take that charge off your card.
Right.
I've never had a problem with that because you know what? And it's language that I use whether I'm talking to a wireless company or a utility or anyone else, and that language is, how do we make this a win-win situation?
Right.
We know it's a very competitive business. I've been a loyal customer. How can we help each other out?
Exactly.
And it works.
Does it?
Sure does. It helped with charges that should not have been on certain utility bills. It happened at a restaurant that had overcharged me.
Really?
Because they claimed that someone in the crowd hadn't paid enough cash. And I didn't sign the statement, and I went to the credit card company, and they said, no, that's not right, we'll settle it for you.
Exactly.
So I said, you know what, here's what it is, here's what the tax is, I'm willing to pay that, but the rest of the money's not mine.
Exactly. Now let me ask you this question. When we've even talked about this, but I think we should now. I guess there's a top 10 list?
Yeah.
Well,
do you know,
I was going to say I'm not going to turn into David Letterman right now with the top 10 list. I guess there's a Better Business Bureau top 10 list.
There is.
Let's talk about it.
Well, this is probably my favorite news release of the year.
All right.
Because we love the things that we love, we hate it when they don't work, and we hate the companies sometimes that are responsible for them.
All right.
So I like this because it gives people an opportunity to say, I'm not alone.
Okay.
So we're going to deal with the top 10 complaints, most complained about types of businesses.
All right.
TOBs.
Sure.
And the other is inquiries. And
All
an
right.
inquiry is simply when someone comes to the website and looks up a company. Sure. I'm going to go through it quickly for a reason, because the top 10 most complained about types of businesses, number one is cell service and supplies, followed by telephone communications, auto dealers, new and used.
Yeah.
You've got cable TV, satellite, furniture, banks, internet shopping, auto and repair service. What do these all have in common? I can tell you, since I joined Better Business Bureau in 2008, what they have in common is they have all remained on the top 10 list.
Really?
Well, and there's a reason for it. I'm racking my brains and I'm saying, well, these are the things that touch our everyday lives.
Right.
Our cell phones. So it's our communications, our telephones, our cars we need for transportation, our internet shopping, furniture, and so on. Those are the things that irk us, but they're also ubiquitous. We all have cell phones, huge customer base, so it's not unusual people would complain about it. And we have a love-hate relationship with our cell phones.
Oh, yeah.
And our cable and all the rest of it. Now, what's interesting, Pete, is if you look at inquiries, businesses that people inquire about, most of them, 8 out of the 10, are not on the most complained about list. So what people are asking about in 2015 was pretty much the same as the year before. They're researching roofing contractors, general contractors, plumbers, construction and remodeling services. Now there are a few in there, such as collection agencies and used car dealers, that do make it to the top 10 list. But what we find is there's a statistical correlation between doing your research and not having to file a complaint. So we still will receive complaints, for example, about collection agencies when there's a bad marketplace practice. But that being said, when you look at it, the cable TV suppliers and all the rest of them, those are not the ones that people are looking into.
Right.
And what I would suggest is perhaps it's because the contractors, you're talking about big ticket items here, but we should really be looking up every kind of service we use.
Right.
And I've been very surprised when I've looked up some of the companies that I've either dealt with or wanted to deal with. And I put my money where my mouth is because I've had problems before in the marketplace. And I've, if it takes 1 minute to look up a company, and I breathe a sigh of relief.
I was going to say, and what type of information can people find on your website?
Well, if we talk about just looking up a business or charity, you'll pull up what's called a business review.
Okay.
It will assign a letter grade from A to F, A plus to F. It'll explain what are the factors that lowered or raised the score. But the most important thing is it'll show you the different categories of complaints, whether it was billing, problems with sales, problems with the item itself, with the product. But you can also click on it and read what the consumer's complaint was with their name redacted.
Really?
And you can see how the business answers. It's wonderful. And if you see that there's a small business with many, many complaints that they're not resolving, do you want to do business with them?
No.
But at the same time, there are businesses that are much larger in terms of volume, and if they resolve those complaints in a fair and timely manner, that's a different story. You can expect a cell phone company to have tens of thousands of complaints over the course of a year.
Of course you do.
If Joe's Garage down the street also has tens of thousands of complaints, clearly that would
And then
be a
there's an
problem.
issue. There's definitely an issue. Now, as far as the grading system goes, you said it starts at A or A plus?
A plus down to F.
Okay.
Now, we used to call accredited businesses BBB members.
Yep.
We now call them accredited businesses.
Okay.
And in order to qualify, you can't just call up and say, hi, I'd like to join Better Business Bureau. You're invited to join. We do a thorough background check on advertising, on transparency, contact information. And these are the things that go into it. Now, we also have reports on businesses that are not BBB accredited.
Okay.
And some of them are eligible for an A+, some accredited businesses are not because they might not have been in business long enough. So we try and make it across the board. It is fair across the board. And the thing that businesses can do if they're not accredited by BBB is provide contact information. A lot of time that's what people want.
Right, exactly. And we've got about a couple seconds left before we go. So before we leave, I want to thank you for coming down, Howard Schwartz from the BBB.
Pleasure.
Hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
I look forward to that.
All right. On behalf of Howard Schwartz, I'm Pete Mezzetti. Thanks. Good night, and we'll see you next week.